2021 has been my most productive and consistent year yet, but it's all been a result of tracking, measuring, adjusting, tweaking, and perfecting my habits and routines throughout the years. Now, through that process, there's been one piece of tech that rules my life. It tells me when to work out and how hard, when I need a break, when's the optimal sleep and wake time for my body, when I'm getting sick before I even feel it, and so much more. This little band has hands down been the best investment I've made that's more than 10x my productivity, and it allows me to perform at my best, and it's called a Whoop. So to start, I'll give you the background on why I got a Whoop in the first place. Now, I always get asked if it's my Apple Watch or a Fitbit, but it packs a lot more power than any other fitness tracker on the market, and I wouldn't even consider it to really fit in that category. Now, I'm not a fan of tracking calories and steps, as they're really not valid metrics or indicators of your fitness or health, and they give you very little useful data. Steps are not accurately tracked, and they're not a good depiction of how hard you're actually working that day, but more on that later. Now, the main reason I wanted a highly accurate tracker was because I wanted real, actionable feedback on how my body was responding to everything from the environment I was in, to travel, to food, to stress, and so on. Now, this is called a feedback loop, and it's the first thing any high performer understands and needs to leverage daily. It simply means tracking the actions that you're taking, measuring their outcomes, and keeping a log of what's good and what's bad, what you should continue to do, and what you should avoid at all costs. Now, this is such a simple idea, but most people go through life never measuring or considering the consequences of their actions. Now, the way that I measure results in my business is how I measure things with my personal life and my own health as well. Otherwise, without hard data and tracking, we tend to be on autopilot. So we do only what feels good in the moment, usually the same things over and over again, with no real notion or understanding of how those things are affecting us. And then we wonder why we aren't living our lives to our fullest potential or the way we want to be. So for example, if I start going to bed 30 minutes earlier, that's the action. I notice that my metrics on my Whoop look much better. I recover better and I feel better the next day. That's the results. Backed by both objective data with my Whoop, as in I'll visibly be able to see how higher sleep performance correlates to higher recovery, and subjective. I feel better and I'm more productive. So I'm gonna keep doing this. Now on the flip side, if I start going to bed 30 minutes later, or I watch TV with a lot of light before bed and my sleep quality goes down, if I'm not tracking that, I would probably never notice or acknowledge the fact that I feel tired all the time and I have brain fog, as it would just become so normal for me. I wouldn't notice that I actually start sleeping in a little bit too, because maybe it's only a difference of 20 or 30 minutes. But without proper tracking in place, this is how most people go through life, unaware of how subtle changes in their habits are truly affecting them. Now, there's a term for this with our nervous system that I can't remember and I couldn't find it earlier, but basically the idea is when you have sustained pressure on your skin over time, your nerves actually stop firing and you no longer feel or recognize that pressure. So this is why you don't notice or feel your watch that you're wearing all the time, or feel or notice your clothes throughout the day. And this sustained pressure of continual habits and routines is what we eventually become numb to as well, without realizing the consequences, good or bad. So ultimately, I knew I needed a black and white way to track what was happening with my body and my health as a result of my habits. Now, this feedback loop is the initial reason that I got a Whoop. And our bodies actually store a ton of information and give us a ton of feedback about what's good for us and what isn't. But if we aren't tracking and analyzing that data, we could be doing more harm than we realize. So years ago, I came across this idea that there's one metric that could indicate the majority of this feedback. It would reflect when you're under stress. It could tell you if you've recovered adequately from your workout the day before and whether you should work out again, or it could even predict injuries and illness before they actually happen. Now, that metric is your heart rate variability. And the best, most accurate way to track this consistently that exists on the market today, at least that I know of, is a Whoop. So tracking this and sleep objectively as part of that feedback loop are the main reasons that I got my Whoop a little over 3 years ago now, because I recognized the effect that measuring these would have on my performance in all areas of my life. Ultimately, what gets measured gets managed, and I knew I couldn't be left to guess what was working and what wasn't, and what helped me get good sleep and what didn't. So while heart rate variability and sleep quality are the main two metrics that I look at, Whoop gives me so much more than that on a daily basis. So let's take a look at the data that I do get daily and how I actually use that to truly optimize my routines. Now, the first thing I look at every morning is a recovery score. And every day, Whoop gives you a percentage score indicating how well your body is body's actually recovered from the stress that it underwent the day before. So it's a function of the cardiovascular strain that you underwent yesterday, along with your heart rate variability, your sleep performance, and your other baseline metrics. What I love is this is a highly personalized score, and it's the only thing I know of that can accurately track how your body's actually responding to all you put it through the day before. Now, you can also use this recovery score to determine how you want to taper your workout for the day. So, for example, if I click into my strain score, I can even see it coach me to what my optimal day strain is based on that recovery. Now, I typically do Orange Theory for my workouts, along with incorporating some lifts throughout the week, which are all pre-planned to a set template. But I can still adjust my workout within that based on my data. So, for example, if I have a great recovery that day, I might push my speeds a little bit more on the treadmill, or I might increase my watts on the rower. If I have a lower recovery or I'm still sore, I might opt to lift that day instead and keep my cardiovascular strain lower. Or if my recovery is really low, which happens sometimes if I'm overreaching in my training, I might take the day off completely and focus on mobility and stretching that day, or I'll just do nothing. Now, the other important stats that I look at aside from my recovery are my 5 health scores. Now, this dashboard is a recent addition from the new Whoop 4.0, but it's extremely powerful to have this data at my fingertips daily without having to actually go into a doctor. Now, overall, I use this dash as a check engine light, an indicator of how things like food or alcohol or stress are affecting me, and also to give me early warning signs if I'm getting sick. Now, in today's age, I can also use this to isolate myself if I'm seeing signs of something like COVID, which could occur without me feeling symptoms. Now, I can also use this info to prevent illness and pump extra liquids that day, or up my vitamin intake to fight off whatever I might be up against. Now, lastly, I check out my sleep. How did I sleep last night? And did I get adequate amounts of REM or deep sleep? Now, if I notice that I didn't get enough REM, for example, I first look to see when the bulk of it occurred, because deep sleep typically should occur mostly in the earlier parts of the night, while the bulk of your REM sleep should occur in the last 4 hours or second half of the night. So usually if I don't get enough time in bed, I'm not going to see the right amount of REM sleep. And REM sleep in particular affects your cognition the next day. So this is why I've started to go to bed earlier so that I can make sure I get the right quality of sleep each night. Now, I also noticed how the previous day's stressors affected me by whether I had more REM or more deep sleep. So if I did a lot more thinking or creative work yesterday, I'll generally see higher REM sleep. And if my day was more physical or I had a particularly tough workout, I'll typically see more deep sleep. And for women, a new thing that Whoop has added that is amazing is tracking your menstrual cycle, but not in the usual way. What it's really tracking is your hormonal changes and giving you tips based on where you're at in the month. So I can see at any given time, past, present, or future, how those hormonal changes are or will be affecting things like my sleep and ability to take on strain. Now, you can see that it also tells me what to do when I might have a harder time taking on strain, like increasing hydration levels or sodium intake. So all of this data is great, but if you don't use it to improve your routines, it doesn't do much good. So now let's get to the results. How has my life actually changed since using Whoop? The biggest thing that's changed for me, that's affected my productivity more than anything else, is my sleep quality and my awareness of what contributes to good sleep for me personally. Now, being able to track sleep within +1 or minus of what I'd get in a sleep lab is the main reason I got a Whoop. There's nothing else on the market that tracks with this kind of accuracy. And any data you get from something like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch is gonna be pretty inaccurate. Now, before I was tracking this, I thought I was getting enough sleep because I was almost always in bed for 8 to 9 hours a night, sometimes more. But I always felt tired the next day, and I just thought that was normal for me. But what I realized once I got my Whoop is that although I was sleeping enough most of the time, I wasn't getting the right kind of sleep. So when I first got it, my REM sleep was usually 30 minutes or less per night, just a fraction of my overall time of sleep. Now, it's great to know what your output is, like your sleep quality, but you can't really do much about it if you don't have a way to track your inputs as well. So one of the best parts of the Whoop is the journal feature. Now, based on your lifestyle, you can choose what questions you want it to ask you every morning about your habits from the previous day, and then it will spit back how that stuff is actually affecting you on every level physiologically, and even how you compare to other Whoop members. So over time, I was able to figure out what I needed to increase my sleep. So now I get consistently over an hour and a half of REM every night. So what I found contributed the most to my sleep improvement were a few things. Blue light blocking glasses as soon as the sun goes down. A cold room at 67 degrees plus my 8 mattress, which is the best thing ever, is temperature controlled based on the temperature in my room and my sleep cycle, and not eating within an hour or two of bedtime. Now, one thing that my mattress actually tracks that I've seen reflected in my recovery on Whoop is sleep time consistency. So going to bed and waking up at the same time every day is a huge factor in how well I sleep and how well I recover the next day. And by seeing that, I've become much more consistent in all of my routines, knowing that I now have hard bookends to my day. So moving into the new year, I'm actually going to be keeping these 7 days a week, whereas I used to be a little more flexible with bed and wake times on Sundays. Now, a few other things that I've started to add in and that have had a positive impact on my data include a 6-minute Theragun routine before bed, which the benefits and science of are beyond the scope of this video, but that alone has drastically improved my sleep efficiency and recovery as well. I also got blackout curtains to eliminate any and all light in my room, and most recently, I've been experimenting with going to bed at 8:30 and stopping work a few hours before. In other words, Whoop has allowed me to identify the biggest thing that was draining me the next day, which was poor sleep quality. And through tracking my habits and showing me the results, it's helped me craft a routine that I can follow each night to make sure I get the most from my time in bed so that I can perform my best the next day. I would have never known this had I not had a way to track it. Now, naturally, the journal feature and resulting data have also changed how I view a lot of other things I used to not notice or pay attention to, like alcohol, as I can tangibly see a dip in my sleep performance and recovery the next day when I drink. And just having that data in front of you is enough to help you change habits permanently. So when I see a red recovery because I had a few drinks the day before, it makes me second guess if I really want that drink or not the next time. Now, if I was just relying on how I felt, it'd be a lot easier to ignore it and keep repeating habits that aren't serving me. But when you see it reflected back at you, and then you can look at that data over time in a weekly, monthly, or yearly aggregate, you can't ignore what those habits are doing to your body. And lastly, the strain level has been a game changer for my workouts as well. I used to train 3 times a day with a run, an Orange Theory workout, and a heavy lift. I know, very unhealthy. But while I knew deep down I was actually destroying my body and the dangers of this well outweighed any benefit I could get, I kept doing it. Had I had my Whoop back then to see how poorly my body was actually recovering and how that stress was continually eating away at so many other factors of my health, I would have put a stop to it much sooner. But the daily strain level is a result of how much cardiovascular strain you underwent the day before. So I can use this to see if I should push harder in a workout and up my cardiovascular strain, or if I should taper back. Also seeing how higher strains affect my recoveries and not just the day after, but the 2 to 3 days after, has given me a totally new insight on how to actually structure my workouts throughout the week for optimal performance. Now, the new Whoop 4.0 will also buzz during a workout to let you know when you've hit your optimal strain score based on the day's recovery score. So overall, feedback loops are key to growth, and being able to track your process, your habits, and your routines and know exactly how those things are affecting vital metrics within your body is priceless and non-negotiable if you want to truly optimize every area of your life to perform your best. Now, Whoop has been the biggest game changer for me, and it's allowed me to track everything easily and accurately. So if you have a Whoop, comment down below. I'd love to know what you've noticed in your own data over time. And if you don't have one, or you don't have one yet, what's the biggest thing that you think you need to track in your life to improve your performance this year?